Well, welcome to Doing It Right, yet another show about incredible people who continue to do it right and build successful businesses. And today is no exception. Today is all about tequila. Are you curious? Stay tuned.
Welcome to our podcast, Doing It Right. This podcast reveals authentic stories from successful leaders doing it right. It's about their journey to become a leader, their choices, motivations, and lessons. In essence, how they built successful personal brands. Your host is Valerie Sokolosky, author of 8 leadership books and nationally known as an authority on executive presence and personal branding. Let's get started. Here's Valerie.
Okay, I want to welcome you to another wonderful show. And today I'm welcoming 2 women founders of 1953 Tequila Company. And they came from senior executive positions. How did they get into this? So let me just welcome Lindsey and Shivam. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us. We're so excited to be here.
This is really going to be interesting because I really had not even thought about trying tequila. I love wine. I'm all into wine. But now you have me into tequila. So let's just start from the beginning. First of all, tell us a little bit about both of you. Shivam, would you start?
Yeah, absolutely. First, thank you again for having us. We love getting to tell the story of 1953, but more importantly, we love telling the story of women. Ultimately, our company is about elevating the stories of women in every way. And so for Lindsey and I, we had both worked in male-dominated industries for much of our career, much like the spirits industry. And we realized a friend of ours brought us together, our friend Allison, who's our third co-founder. And we were thinking one day about how every woman we know drinks tequila, and yet we never hear anything about a female consumer, a female producer. There are so many stories about tequila, but you don't hear about the women in the industry. And it made us wonder, where are the women? And why aren't their stories being told? And it was Lindsey's idea to start 1953 Tequila, not just to make a great tequila, but to really lift up the stories of the women who make the spirit so special.
So go ahead, please, Lindsey.
Valerie, I was just say, as Shivam said, we both come from very male-dominated fields, and we had spent our career being the only women at the table. And when you are in those positions, you have to show up very differently. And we knew bringing that sentiment to this product was going to be really important, that we had to create not only a tequila that was different in the sense of providing opportunities for women, but we also had to make an exceptional additive-free tequila. We knew this product had to be different, from the packaging to the values behind the product to how we present ourselves in the market. And so we brought that same sentiment of being exceptional at the table to this particular product.
So before I get into everything about tequila, how did the 2 of you meet?
We met through our friend Allison. You know, we were here in the DC area, and through common friends, we got to know each other, and we realized we had a lot more in common than we initially knew we would. And it was the start of a new friendship. And I think for so many people, you find sometimes your best self in working and spending time with folks that are not like you. And it was exciting to meet somebody as an adult who we became close very quickly.
You know, I always love stories about pioneers in any realm, whether it's women pioneers in women things or researching pioneers. You 2 certainly are. So I would just ask you to tell those of us who, me included, really, I wasn't that familiar with the difference. Tequila, right? So just from a taste standpoint, how would I know it's a good tequila? What am I looking for?
Well, I think a lot of it, Valerie, and we've poured some in a glass too, to be able to describe it. But a lot of it is looking at the color of the tequila. You know, we prefer tequila without additives, and a lot of, there are different tequilas on the market for, mixing, for sipping. Ours is añejo tequila for sipping. It's aged for 15 months in vintage American oak barrels that were previously used for bourbon. And we chose the no additive route. That was really important to us, and we knew it would be important to our customer as well. And so when you're looking at tequila, it's important to really look at the color. Ours, because it obviously doesn't have any additives, it's just that nice golden champagne looking color. And typically, I guess similar to how you do wine, Valerie, when you do the tastings, you can see the legs of the tequila. And the legs on our tequila slowly go down the side of the glass, which is also another kind of proof point that there are no additives in it. But it's important that the tequila have that kind of long, slow movement down the glass to really show the depth of the tequila and its taste. And because we age and vintage American oak barrels previously used for bourbon, we actually have a lot of bourbon drinkers who really enjoy our tequila because it's the same type of experience. We wanted it to be a sipping tequila, a tequila that brought together people and brought together incredible conversation. And so that's what we really centered this particular product around.
So tell us about just the name, Shivam, the name 1953 tequila. That's just interesting in itself.
So 1953 is the year women in Mexico got the right to vote. And for us, we wanted to honor the courage, the tenacity, and the boldness of women, and really just double down on our belief that women can change the world. And when we thought about making a tequila that really honored that spirit, it had to be authentic. It's why, Lindsey talked about this being an additive-free product. Additive-free really allows the artisanal ways that tequila has been made to shine. And so we didn't want this to be anything short of pure. And the team that we work with on the ground, they wanted the same. We have four sisters who own a agave farm that we worked with when we first met them. Well, I'll come back to them. We have a female master distiller, and we have a distillery owned by a family for over 100 years. And it was our distillery partner who helped us find an agave farm owned by women, because as you may know, in Mexico and in many countries, farms are passed down within families from father to son. And in this particular family, there were no sons. And we approached this family. We approached the dad with the help of our distillery owner and told him the story of what we were trying to build and asked if he would consider passing his farm to his daughters so that we could work with them and really have a female-owned farm supplying our agave. And that was a crucial opportunity for us and for them. And Lindsey, you always share it best, how the daughters reacted.
Yeah, I mean, the daughters were excited to think about this opportunity. And you can imagine these four girls had been running this agave farm since they were little, and they had just never thought of themselves as business owners or as landowners. And, when we went to their father and said, if we can guarantee purchase of agave for 1953 tequila, would you consider turning over your farm to your four daughters? And I think it was, a bold move in the sense of them even considering taking on this endeavor. And after a family meeting, they came back to us and said they would absolutely take it on. And I think one of the things that we got so excited about as we're really trying to, build this brand and the ethos behind it was they came back to us with their why. And why they wanted to do it was there was a high school down the road from their agave farm, and they had never thought of themselves as business owners. And they actually wanted every young girl in that high school to start thinking a little bit differently about what was possible for them. And so that really, helped solidify our supply chain. So now that we are absolutely founded, farmed, distilled, and led by women at every single level.
That's just wonderful. Just such a neat story. One of your top takeaways that you sent was build your own safety net. And you just kind of talked about that. Be proactive. Give us some tips, those of us that have had to forge our own ways. I remember when I got into broadcasting, I actually had a broadcaster tell me there are no women because you couldn't handle the crime scenes. Well, of course, that just made me decide I'd do it more.
Right? That's right. I
But I
feel
think
like that's one of our greatest superpowers
Yeah.
as women, right? Being underestimated.
Mhm.
they do. And I bring it back to the fact that today is such a chaotic world. And I find in my executive coaching part of our leadership firm that sometimes people are getting stuck. It's like, ooh, it's, things aren't stable. I'm afraid. There seems to be, this is my perspective, but there seems to be a hesitancy. And I don't like that. I want people to look at life and say, okay, so whatever's going on out there, I can. Talk to us about that.
This is something I think both Lindsay and I have faced so many different times in our career and in our life, not just in our career. We
Hmm.
both grew up far from opportunity. And along the way, there had to be people who took bets on us. And we, of course, had to take bets on ourselves. And no doubt, the more you do it, the more you get confident doing it, like anything. The more you practice, the more you progress. But on the safety net in particular, we're not serial entrepreneurs, but this is not something we would have done in our 20s because at that point, I don't think we felt like we had that safety net. You
Mm.
build it over time. And that comes from trust and it comes from finding folks that have a shared set of values. And when we were looking for partners on the ground, we talked to a lot of different people. People get excited about the idea of a tequila company. Everybody wants to be in. And then you start talking about what it actually takes and what our non-negotiables are, right? Like this is,
Right.
we were serious about female leadership. We
Uh-huh.
had opinions about what the tequila should taste like. We thought about how we should market it. And we were told very often by a whole host of folks, what our company should look like. And it was not the same as our own vision for the company. And it was through that process that we realized there were some people who would be great partners and there were others that wouldn't. And there were times where we were pushed. And I think we really had to be clear on what our non-negotiables are and what we were willing to compromise on. Because certainly we had to make compromises along the way. Every
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneur, every leader does. But knowing what we couldn't shift on and where we had to be willing to shift was important. And doing that together, we built a safety net for each other, and we realized the sky's the limit on what we're capable of. And if we look at the opposite end, say everything falls apart, we've still got something we're really proud of building. And we have stories that we're helping tell to the world of folks that have been fighting this good fight for a long time. So I think for us, it was really thinking about what's non-negotiable, where are we willing to push harder, at the end of the day, like what are we aiming to build? And as much as we want to build a world-class tequila company, if that comes at the cost of not telling the stories of women or having a compromised product or doing things in a way that's inconsistent with our values, then that company is not a world-class tequila company for us.
Well, it is a world-class tequila, that I know. And I'm looking at the back. I can see the bottles. Would you be willing to bring one up and just there you go. Okay,
you.
it's beautiful. Let's just start there. It's beautiful. To me, it's very feminine looking. So how did that design and the bottle itself come into being?
I think for us, when we first started, true to us wanting to elevate the stories of women, we worked with female bartenders to really understand what they wanted to pour. And oftentimes, tequila bottles are kind of short and fat and really hard for women in particular to pour behind a bar.
Uh-huh.
And so we worked closely with female bartenders to help develop that type of shape. But we also wanted something strong. We wanted something sophisticated. We wanted something that would be a showstopper on the back bar. We knew we were going to be an elegant disruptor in the industry because it is such a male-dominated industry. So we wanted to make a statement. And so we wanted a bottle that really popped. And so on the back of the bottle, our master distiller signs every bottle, Rocio Rodriguez. She's a chemical engineer by trade, actually came to the distillery pregnant, worried that she would lose her job. And instead, our distillery owner built a nursery so that she would have access to childcare, but that all women at the distillery would have access to childcare. So she signs these bottles with so much pride. And she also makes exceptional tequila. And the stopper. This is a copper stopper. It is hefty. It's made to be used in other bottles. Right underneath the sticker, it has 1953. So even when you have it in your wine bottle, you'll still remember 1953. But it's been fascinating to see how people have really upcycled these bottles. We find on Instagram, they'll send us photos of making them into lamps or vases. I mean, it's just been fun to see how creative people get. But honestly, Valerie, it just came from, literally every detail of this bottle is well thought out, and the input of women who we knew would enjoy it.
Even the color of the label is meant to reflect the color of the blue Weber agave that's inside the bottle. And the curves, along with the pleating, are reflective of mid-century modern design, which is the same time period, of course, as 1953. And we wanted to put care into the design of this package because there's so much care put into the juice that's inside, and it felt like it had to, at a minimum, be commensurate.
All right, so let's say I don't, but let's say it's the glass that you held up, and I want you to show us the etiquette. So since I'm the etiquette queen, they say, what's the etiquette of drinking tequila?
Sure. So, we prefer 1953 just neat or over a block of ice. In the summer, it's very refreshing over a block of ice. But when you first start sipping tequila, it's important to put the glass around 3 or so fingers away from your nose, so you can really get a sense of the smell of the raw agave. And then you can also start to pick up the scents from the barrel. Ours has a maple vanilla smell to it from the bourbon. And when you start to really swirl the juice around and let it breathe a bit, your first sip, you're going to take a small sip and let it just dance on your tongue for a bit. That's when you're really going to taste the agave, just that cooked earthiness of the agave. Your second taste is when you actually are going to enjoy the maple and the vanilla and the caramel notes from the barrels. So we often invite people to take that first sip and really, just enjoy the authenticity of that agave. And then the second sip is where it will go down a lot smoother. And in fact, we actually rest our tequila. When we take it out of the barrels, we rest it and lay it to rest for, about 11 months until we put it in the bottles. And that really, for us, it takes out that bite that people often associate with tequila. We always say we don't have the burn, we have the warmth. And I think it was important for us to keep that warmth. We often joke that this is not a bad decision over ice the next morning because it has no additives, so it doesn't make you feel terrible the next day. But it's really meant to be savored. It's really meant to bring people together over conversation and community.
So with the next several women events that I'm going to be attending, believe me, women, I'm going to be watching if they're serving tequila. And if not, you'll start getting, I hope, a lot of bartenders calling you.
Great.
Valerie, tequila is plant-based. It's made from blue Weber agave. And so it's really part of why it's so popular is it's naturally low in sugar and it's naturally keto friendly. And when you're drinking it straight, you're not adding any sugar to it. So if you're putting it in a cocktail or mixing it, that's going to be different. But with an añejo this pure, when you're drinking it straight, we can't say that alcohol is ever healthy, but in the category of alcohol, this is probably the best thing you can do for yourself.
That's a pretty big statement and a good one. Okay, I like that. I want to go to one of the things that you mentioned in your top takeaways, which is in fog, move forward. What's that about?
I mean, we are a startup business. And every day we have to make decisions, sometimes very high stakes, sometimes very small. Sometimes we think very small and they end up being high stakes where we don't have all the information we need. In an ideal world, we would be having much more time to make mission critical decisions. But every day we are faced with a barrage of decisions we need to make. And this connects to your earlier question about the safety net. We have learned there can be decision paralysis. You could spend all the time in the world gathering information and it might not lead you to a better answer. And so we have learned to flex that muscle of making decisions when you don't always have everything you need, learning to trust your instinct, figuring out what's more important to know, and frankly, having strategies in place to course correct if you've made the wrong choice. But this notion of, in being in a startup world, like we've both worked in government, we've worked in the private sector. Every industry has its own culture for how to make decisions. And for us, we need to be able to move quickly sometimes, and we need to be willing to take stands and make decisions when we don't have everything we would typically like to have. And so for us, this INFOG move forward really means keep moving, keep moving, make the decisions. If you're going to fail, fail fast, course correct, keep moving. We learn by doing.
This reminds me of a partnership I had once that kind of went awry. And so I want to ask about that, because just being in a partnership has its own issues, right? So how different are the two of you? And along with that, how does that difference or similarity blend together, just like the tequila in the mouth?
Oh, that's a cool question.
Yeah.
I love that.
I mean, I think we both know diverse teams get you to better places. Like that's just in every work experience I've ever had. If everyone has the same perspective, there's just no way you're getting to the best answer that's possible. So fundamentally, we believe in that. It's how we build our company. It's how we build the teams that we work with. So I think that is a shared value we have for sure. So in that sense, we're 5,000% aligned. I think in the day-to-day, we spend so much time together. I don't think there's a meal I couldn't order for Lindsey or a sentence I couldn't. And I think the same is true in reverse.
We often have to check when we do public appearances what each other are wearing, because oftentimes we very possibly could be wearing the same thing.
And we're literally drinking the same coffee right now. So we have a lot in common. But there are definitely nuances to the day-to-day, and it's part of, I think, what makes us a stronger team. So, and doing the work, it's how we figure out what we're good, what we're, stronger at, and how we divide and conquer. But for the most part, we work very seamlessly together. And I think, like any relationship, the key is always trust and communication.
And I think, to your earlier question of building the safety net, I think one thing that we did early on was build safety nets within each other, and I think when one of us was lacking confidence, we could lean on each other to pick each other up or to move it forward, and I think that for our partnership was so critical, because it gave us a really strong foundation to build from. And I think, we have similar backgrounds in what we've done. We actually come from similar backgrounds even, and not having a lot of opportunities and having to create those opportunities for ourselves growing up and through education. And so, I think we do come to this with a lot in common, but I think early on building that safety net within each other, knowing that there wasn't anything I couldn't lean on Shivam for, both professionally and personally, was really critical to building that strong foundation. And I think that continues to give us the confidence we need together to move forward in whatever tough decision we're facing.
Definitely.
That's really a partnership. Male, female, or two females or two men, that's called a partnership. That's so good to hear. And the word encouragement is also really good to hear. Have you ever had anyone just try to take you down, like give you bad advice or whatever?
So many times.
So many.
I knew the answer to that.
So many.
Tell us. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes they don't even know they're doing that. They're just being themselves.
That's bad.
I worked in the private sector and investment banking. Lindsey's worked in veterans policy. I mean, we have been in lots of settings where the decision makers are not like us. And it's part of why you have to learn what's non-negotiable. And it's part of why you have to learn where you're sticking firm to your vision. If we listened to everybody who had given us advice in the beginning, we would not have this product. We would not have this company. We might have another product and another company, but it wouldn't be this one. A lot of folks had opinions on what women like to drink. This had to be a girl's tequila. It had to be pink. It had to be sweet. It had to be inexpensive. Definitely only margaritas, because that's how people drink tequila. Additive free is nice, but it's an extra. There are no female distillers. I mean, the list goes on and on.
Right.
The bottle, everybody needs to see the tequila for a new brand. How can you have a white bottle? The amount of feedback we got that we made a decision not to take is a lot. It's a lot. And so, yes, we definitely we've had that experience.
We tell this story a lot, but
Yeah.
we've been told no a lot. And I think
Mhm.
that has been the beauty of this company and this brand. You know, I mean, this is not a brand like anything else on the market. We knew walking into this it would be somewhat of a disruption, but a good one, and one that was necessary. And I think, you know, when you're in those positions, I think it is easy for others to take you down or to try to or to tell you no or to redirect you in a way
Yeah.
that isn't constructive.
Mhm.
And I think for us, every no we received, especially in the beginning, we just figured out a way to turn that into a yes.
That's
And I
great.
think that has been an incredible part to our partnership, but I think it's also who we are as a brand, you know, and this is not something that's like anything else on the market. And I think that is so special of what 1953 does. And I think, you know, as we continue to move forward, because we didn't come from the spirits industry, I think we're not afraid or, you know, not afraid to break tradition or not afraid to do things that aren't in the norm. I mean, everyone told us there's no way you can launch a tequila brand online.
Yeah.
And we actually said, well, absolutely there is. And so we launched our brand online and within a month became the top selling spirit online. And we also, during that time, gathered the data we needed to be able to go into distribution conversations with actual data of where our customers were, who was buying us, where we already were hot. And so we kind of gave ourselves power going into those discussions because we weren't afraid to do things differently. And I think that is the beauty of 1953 and what it does in the market.
Well, it's also the beauty of some great encouragement because when you think about, and you did say this actually, the best bet you can make is on yourself. It's just, again, I go back to unfortunately what I'm hearing too much of, which is just discouragement, discouragement, discouragement. And it's not easy to pick ourselves up and tune that out. So thank you for that. I think that's really important, which also leads to it's probably part of your value system, right? You said to me, don't ever compromise on your vision or your values. Did you ever feel like you were compromising on values?
Not with the decisions we ultimately made. I mean, I do think we were presented with opportunities early on when we were looking for the right partners to flesh out our team. There was definitely at least one partner I can think of that had a very strong, their own strong vision for the brand and had a set of resources and a history that could have gotten us to market faster. And that was attractive, but it would have been faster with a very different product and frankly with a very different decision-making process where women were not ultimately in leadership at every level. And so I think in that instance, for the person proposing it, it was very rational. We'd have a great product, we'd get to market. They knew how to do this. Why wouldn't they be in charge? For us, we're like, well, because this is more than tequila and we have a vision and it's as good, if not better than yours. And it's our idea. So why would we just give this all up? You know? And so I think, yeah, I do think there have been times where our values have been pushed. I think for both of us, being folks that had grown up far from opportunity, you learn to hustle, you learn to, you know, have that confidence in yourself and have that confidence in your team that you're going to figure it out. You know, even when the path isn't clear, you're going to work harder, you're going to spend more time, you're going to talk to more people, you're going to find a path. If you're working on the right projects, you're going to find the right path.
You just got to believe in yourself sometimes, don't you, even when others don't? Women, you've been interviewed on many shows, I know that. So I'm going to ask if there is a question no one's asked and you wish they had.
Oh,
I don't know. This is a good
that
question,
is a good
Valerie.
question. I feel like we've been asked a lot of things.
Valerie, we've honestly been asked such a range of things. We've been asked what our kids think. We've been asked what we read. We've been asked what we drink when we're not having tequila. Gosh, I don't know. I mean, maybe I hope when people look at this story and they look at this brand and they look at this tequila, they really remember that it's ultimately about lifting people up. You know, at the
There
end
you
of the
go.
day, again, like we want to build a world-class company, we want to have a world-class product, but we want to be something that makes you feel good about yourself and makes you feel good about the world and gives you that little extra. And we joke about this, but it's true. Tequila is one of the few things that just always brings people together and brings levity to almost any situation.
Mhm.
And that spirit is something we really do want to capture and spread.
You know,
And I
that
think, oh, so
go,
Shivam also mentioned our kids. People often
Mhm.
ask us about
right.
our kids
Yeah.
and what they think about this. And I think, for us, it's just really important when we're talking about the values of our brand
Mhm.
that we don't compromise on that, because I think it's important that we always remember who's watching us, and for us, everything is about our family always. And so it's been an incredible journey for our kids to even go on with us, and see their mothers doing great things in business, but also not making compromises on the product or the values. And I think those are such big life lessons that it's often fun to kind of sit back and watch your kids take that in, because while we are working in tequila, there's just so many life lessons, I think, especially for our daughters, to learn about the work that we're doing.
It's so interesting we're ending on this comment because when I was building my company, I had a very strong faith-based woman that was a really good friend. And she took me aside and she said, Valerie, I don't think this is what you, literally, her words, should be doing. Should, oughta, be doing. I mean, you should concentrate on raising the children. And I remember being hurt. I remember feeling then questioning, and then I kind of got angry inside. And so I think you've brought up a wonderful point, which is you said it, family is first. You don't have to neglect your family, but you sure can build something that's just part of your value system, an opportunity that you've seen, a source that you've found. Why not try? So I think all three of us are saying the same thing in ending this show, which is don't let anybody say you can't. You just turn around and show them, do it right, but just do it, right? Any comments on that before we close?
I think you nailed it. Our kids all learn integrity is what you do when no one's looking. And I feel like we really try to take that value to our work every day.
That's awesome. Well, I wish the whole company, I wish each of you the best of success, and just know I'll be touting it. I'll be drinking your tequila. No, I don't drink a lot, but when I do, I will. Thank you for being on the show so much. And I want you to stay tuned just for a minute while I end with what I call the Valerieism, and here it is for today. It's really pretty simple. We need encouragement a lot more than we admit, even to ourselves. I wish I'd thought of that, but actually it's from Orson Welles. And it's so true. We do need encouragement. If there's someone today listening or watching this show, I want you to stop a minute and bring somebody to mind that you can say, I hadn't thought about that person in a while. Wonder if they need encouragement. Well, they probably do. So pick up the phone and say something to them as an encouragement. And that's our show for today. As always, hit that subscribe button. It means so much because it lets me know I'm not doing this just for the grins. I really do want to make a difference, and it's the guests who do. So thank you for tuning in. See you next time, and stay authentic. Bye for now.